Sometimes all of history can pivot on a single place. A bridge, for example. It can connect the past to the future in a really powerful way. And today, we're going to talk about one of those places, a pivotal moment in the American story, and the legacy of a man who helped build that bridge.
So let's start with something very recent. We just learned of the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He was 84. And his passing, well, it really makes you stop and think about his long and incredible life, a life so deeply intertwined with the struggle for justice here in America. And look, this isn't just some dusty history lesson. Literally, this very weekend, people are gathering in Selma, Alabama for the annual march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And this year, it's all dedicated to his memory. So what is that legacy? And what's the deal with this bridge? Why is it so central to his story?
To really get it, we need to rewind the clock. Let's go back to 1965. Selma, Alabama. This place wasn't just some random spot on the map. It was ground zero, a real flashpoint in the fight for the most basic right you can have in a democracy, the right to vote.
So get this, Selma's population was mostly black. But when you looked at who was actually registered to vote, 99% white. That number, it just hits you. And this didn't happen by accident. Oh no, this was a system. And it was designed to work exactly that way. And the guy running this whole show, County Sheriff James Clark. He basically created this gauntlet that was impossible to get through. He'd make people stand in line for hours and hours, then give them some ridiculous literacy test that no one could pass. And the results? You guessed it. Not a single black applicant ever got approved. It was complete and total disenfranchisement. So, you've got these incredible local activists from the Dallas County Voters League, people like the amazing Amelia Boynton. And they knew they were stuck. They needed to do something big to break this thing open. So they made a really smart strategic move. They invited Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come to Selma. The thinking was his national profile could blow this local crisis up into a national cause.
And boy, did it work. What happened next in Selma would grab the attention of the entire world. It all came down to a series of 3 incredibly dramatic marches from the city to the state capitol in Montgomery. So what was the spark that lit the fuse? It was a tragedy. On February 18th, a 26-year-old unarmed activist, Jimmy Lee Jackson, was shot by a state trooper during a protest. 8 days later, he died. His death, it just channeled all that grief and all that anger into action. So on March 7th, they marched, but when they got to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were met by this wall of state troopers and police. And what happened next was just brutal. These unarmed people, men, women, children, were attacked with clubs, with whips, with tear gas. That day would go down in history as Bloody Sunday. And the human cost was just devastating. You have a young John Lewis, who would later become a congressman, getting his skull fractured. Amelia Boynton, the very same woman who brought Dr. King to Selma, she was beaten unconscious. She was 54 years old. And there's this photograph of her lying on the pavement looking like she might be dead. It was published everywhere, and it just shocked the conscience of the nation. Those images from Bloody Sunday, they were like an earthquake. So Dr. King put out a call to clergy, to supporters all over the country, saying, "We need you in Selma." And answering that call was this young, really charismatic seminary student from Chicago. He got a bunch of students together to come down and join the movement, and his name was Jesse Jackson. The public outcry was just deafening. It went all the way to the White House. Think about this. Just 8 days after Bloody Sunday, President Lyndon B. Johnson is addressing a joint session of Congress. And he's not just asking for a Voting Rights Act. He actually uses the anthem of the movement. He says, "And we shall overcome." Just wow. So March 21st, they try again, the 3rd march. But this time, everything was different. Instead of being met with billy clubs, they were protected by the Alabama National Guard, which the president himself had put under federal command. And their numbers just exploded. By the time they reached Montgomery 4 days later, there were 25,000 people. Just imagine that. So the march was this huge, monumental victory, right? It directly led to this landmark law. But for people like Jesse Jackson, this wasn't the end of the road. Securing the vote, that was just the beginning of a much, much bigger fight. But first, let's talk about that political win. Just 5 months after the march, and picture this, with Amelia Boynton right there beside him, President Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act of 1965 into law. It tore down those legal barriers that had kept Black Americans from voting for generations. But like I said, for Jesse Jackson, this was a huge first step, but it wasn't the finish line, not even close. He understood that having the right to vote doesn't mean much if you don't have a job, if you can't feed your family. Political power without economic power, it's kind of an empty promise. So he goes to Dr. King's advisor, Ralph Abernathy, and basically asks for a job with the SCLC. And soon enough, they put him in charge of something called Operation Breadbasket up in Chicago, where he used things like boycotts to fight for jobs and economic opportunities for Black communities.
And that work he did in Chicago, that really became the blueprint for his entire life's work, building these big, broad coalitions to fight for both social and economic justice for anyone who'd been left out or left behind.
And you know, this idea really came to life in his famous 1984 presidential run. He had this incredible way of describing his vision. He said America isn't like a simple blanket, it's more like a quilt, a rainbow coalition of all these different communities, all woven together. What a powerful way to think about a new kind of American politics, right?
So that brings us back to the question, what is his legacy? What's the thing that endures? Well, at his funeral, former President Barack Obama really put his finger on the core message that Jesse Jackson spent his entire life trying to share.
See, Jackson had this incredible gift. He could connect with people who felt invisible, who felt forgotten, and he could make them believe that they mattered, that their voices mattered, that their votes counted. He wasn't just saying, believe in me. He was saying, I invite you to believe in yourselves, to believe in your own power.
And when you zoom out, as Obama pointed out, what Jackson was really fighting for was the very soul of American democracy. It's this core belief that it doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from, we are all part of the American family. We all deserve the same shot.
Now, Obama was also real about the fact that, we live in a time where it is so easy to be cynical. It's tempting to just throw your hands up, put your head down, and just wait for the storms to pass. But Jesse Jackson's whole life offers us a different path. It's not the easy path, for sure. It's harder. But it's a more hopeful path. It's a path that demands that we get involved, not that we just give up. And that really leaves us with that final, powerful question from the eulogy. It's a question his life kind of forces all of us to ask ourselves, especially right now. When things are divided, when we feel discouraged, when it's just plain hard to hope, who's going to answer the call? Who is going to step up?